Welcome everybody to the March Planning Decisions Committee meeting. Yarra Council, their ancestors and their elders. We acknowledge the strength and resilience of the Wurundjeri Boy Wurrung, who have never ceded sovereignty and retained strong connections. We also acknowledge the significant contributions made by other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to life in Yarra. We pay our respects to elders from all nations here today. Councillors here with the exception of Councillor Davies, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Wade. Those three are apologies. We've got all the relevant options. You may respond, I do, to the following question. Do you declare that you've familiarised yourself with the conflict of interest? Deputy Mayor Harrison?
I do.
Councillor Aston?
I do.
Councillor Crossland?
I do.
Councillor Gomez?
I do.
Councillor minutes of the last meeting, 24th of February, we're all here. Somebody who's at that meeting, would you like to move the minutes of the last seconder? Councillor Gomez, any speakers for or against? No. Put that to the floor. All those in favour, they're passed unanimously. Okay, we're going to go through the business agenda. We've got 6 agenda items tonight, so we're going to try and go, just keep it as quick as possible. First one up, lucky for you, 430, 444 Brunswick Street. I'm the next, so I'll make sure the Fitzroy ones go first. That's a joke, by the way. My ward. So before I had alternative motions to myself and from Councillor Crossland, I've spoken to Councillor Crossland prior to the meeting. We're quite happy to merge those into one alternative motion. So moving forward, representing the applicant, welcome Rebecca. When you get to the front, just press one of those buttons. When the red light comes on, you have 5 minutes.
Thanks for the opportunity to address you tonight. My name's Rebecca Lyons and I'm a town planning the permit applicant, Valley Proprietary Limited. I'd like to begin by thanking the officers who throughout this process has been quite candid to get to this stage and are supportive of the officer recommendation tonight, inclusive of the conditions and local planning policy. The site is a large and now vacant site of just access. There's no existing heritage fabric on the site and it has a triple street frontage. The site is an ideal candidate to deliver both council and state's housing target objectives and key activities within the precinct. We acknowledge, however, that the key to the development of the site is managing impacts to neighbouring properties. Impose specific built form requirements, which means a site-specific response is required to guide design and development of the site. However, it's yet to be tested through the Standing Advisory Committee or approved by the Minister and affords little weight in Council's decision making. In formulating the proposal and between the architects, in particular the interface with the adjoining heritage building, the Royal Derby Hotel, the Brunswick Street public realm, and the resident from the nearby Fitzroy Pools, and adopts quality materials and landscaping to ensure a beautiful addition to the Brunswick streetscape. We aligned response and will work with officers on this. The building at a height of 7 stories is deemed appropriate in the context of the main street of an activity centre, identified for housing growth, and the sale has been managed through design and setbacks at upper levels. The 7th level is highly recessive with limited visibility when viewed directly or at oblique angles along Brunswick to the east, as a consequence of the uppermost floor is no greater than would occur for a 6-storey building. Over-compliant and have been addressed through existing res code controls. The risk in the current planning scheme requirements and has adopted the draft DDO or built form overlay controls in this 45-degree angle rear setback above the street wall height. The front upper level setback neighbouring Royal Derby Hotel roof form, the only adjoining heritage fabric given no existing heritage height. This setback, along with the wide northern setbacks, maintain views of the Royal Derby either side of the apex. Setbacks to the north have considered a future development outcome and no overshadowing occurs to the western footpath along Brunswick Street. The built form response is consultation with Council's heritage, planning and design teams, which has gained the officers' support. Of flooding and acoustic management, having regard to the hotel being a live music venue established through ongoing consultation with Melbourne Water in respect to their draft maps. And whilst we offered to undertake further analysis, which has culminated in a detailed condition 14. The detailed assessment to be conducted with respect to multiple facets of the hotel operation to the development plans to ensure that the hotel can operate or continue to operate. Overall, we say the proposal represents a well-considered and quality design
30
outcome.
seconds.
The 7 on the site, noting the carefully considered setbacks which have been adopted to ensure that the development does not result in impacts to surrounding properties or public spaces. The outcome balances the need for growth with the protection of heritage and existing land use and development in the area.
Rebecca, your time is run out. Thank you for your contribution. The next person is Belinda Parsons.
Right, okay. So I've lived in Fitzroy for 29 years and I've been in the Fitzroy Residents Association. I live at 103 Cecil Street, which is one of the 3 most four-storey Victorian terrace, one of the 6 in a row intact. The second development is far too high and does not sensitively interface with the low-rise residences on Cecil Street. Fourth, that removes at least one whole storey, not just the penthouse. There are too many units for the size with 1399 square metres. It is an overdevelopment. Overshadowing on the equinox is infringed by this development. I've already lost a large proportion of my eastern sun due to an 8 on the east side and the second storey of my next door neighbour at 105. I asked council to include my house as they don't reflect my loss of light to my courtyard and my east that relies on the west sun. I am not fully included in the drawings. There's only a little tiny section drawing. Overlooking. Balconies on the east should all have a 1.7 solid permanent screen, not relying on plantings. The second storey setback on the east, does not comply with the draft design. It is 1.7 required, it needs to be rectified. That is unreasonable. ROW or laneway, north-south behind the development, not suitable for car park, evidenced by the fact that the developer needs to widen it by 1 metre. I've measured the lane myself, it is 3.2 up to be removed. There are issues with the noise from the cars travelling up and down and the danger to traffic to pedestrians and other cars. The rear belongs to the community and is not to be exploited by a developer financial gain at the cost of those of us who live here and pay rates, which is the standard 5.2 type size vehicle, and garbage vehicles at the exit point of the car park, and there are going to be scrapings underneath cars as they leave Alexander Parade. As an alternative car park entry, we would like to see it at the existing crossover on Cecil Street. I understand there were flood concerns, but that should be easily addressed by ramps, which is the same treatment as being resolved on the actual laneway and entry points, which is the current proposal. Stormwater needs to be addressed in any case, as Cecil Street is a severe evident. I was there when it flooded in 2003. Cecil Street was a river and Brunswick Street was that river that ran into it, and it was dammed all and just rose and rose. Anyway, traffic on the laneway, 9 cars per day, 34 at the peak hours. That's a road in my book, and the surface should be treated as such and have the cobblestones for noise remediation. Otherwise, the whole laneway should be resurfaced so that the extra metre matches the emergency vehicle access. I'm concerned. I had my elderly mum with me for 5 years. 3 times ambulances had to come and get her to hospital, and it was life and death, life or death. The shop issue. We'd like to move the shop to Brunswick Street to retain the ability and visibility of that business. It won't last. There's plenty of empty shops in Brunswick Street right now. Also, we don't want goods delivery operational between 7
30 seconds.
10 p.m. Okay, car parking shortfall. We believe that there's going to be... also, I don't like to return home late at night and unable to get back to my home as I can't find a car park dangerous for women in particular. And there's only one disability car space, which I think is disgraceful in this day and age, in 54 car spaces.
The next person is Sebastian Ingram.
I think Yuka is going to speak for the both of us. She's registered for later.
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
Yuka is going to speak for the 2 of us. She's registered to talk later.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. Okay, no worries. We'll do that. Sebastian Ingram. Oh, no, just ask that. Kim Davey. Welcome, Kim. Just the light's already on, so your 5 minutes start as soon as you begin to talk.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk. I'm a resident who lives about 100 metres away. I'm also a professor of urban design at the University of Melbourne, but I don't really want to oppose this development, which I think actually has a lot going for it. I agree with most of what has been said about the good parts of the development. Because I'm a bit of a fan of higher densities. Density, in general terms, in my view, adds walkability to the city. It makes public transport more viable. Health, it's linked to the safety of streets and to all kinds of other things. So the problem is this is density done badly. This is a podium. It's largely geared to a luxury market of car driving population, and it will have a low residential density coupled with a very tall building. Well, very tall compared to the surroundings, and also reasonably tall compared to what the DDO says are the mandate for this zone. The DDO suggests that the height 20.8 metres, and this building, as far as I can tell, is 24.5, and yet it says that the planner's report says that it generally complies with the DDO. I would have thought that a building that exceeds a mandatory limit by around about 18% is not generally complies. I mean, I don't know how caught speeding and you said, look, I'm generally requiring with the speed limit, but only 18% over it. The DDO also says that there are mandatory overshadowing requirements, overshadowing maps and diagrams that would prove the point, but a tower of that height at that time of year, this is during the solstice period, it's not supposed to cast a shadow on the opposite, past the opposite gutter, or roughly the opposite gutter, 0.3 metres inside the opposing at the September equinox period. At that period, the shadow of a building of this height is going to be about 30 metres, but that gutter is only about 17 metres away, and even at an oblique angle. It strikes me that this also violates the mandatory requirement, and again, I can't see why we have some kind of mandatory requirement if planning officers can simply overrule it with a statement that says that it generally complies without any kind of an argument. The statement of the planning officer also says that there is strong strategic support for this kind of development, this type of development. But what does this type of development mean? Because there was no real explanation of where that strategic support was coming from. I'm presuming that it was coming from an understanding that we have an affordable housing crisis. And if that's the case, then we should be looking hard at the kind of developments that we're approving, and we should be looking hard at the kind of apartments that are being approved. This is a development that has a fairly low podium. I actually put a submission in suggesting that there could be a little bit more bulk around the base of this building and a bit less on the tower, which is it could easily be chopped back to about 5 stories and would have a much better impact on the neighbourhood and indeed on the Brunswick streetscape. Lined up with balconies along that street is a part of what keeps the street safer. The more people overlooking the street, the more eyes on the street, then, as Ed would remember, I would guess, right? The more eyes there are on the street, the safer the street gets over a period of time. So I think that this sets a precedent. I don't think that it should be approved, and I think that if it is approved, then the next development that comes in, which may well be the site right across the road where the IGA supermarket is, the developers would quite rightly say, if they can do that,
30 seconds.
then I can do this. I'm finished. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kim. Next person is William Moore. Okay, no William Moore. Timothy Jones, welcome.
Thanks, Mayor and councillors. I'm here to object to the building on similar grounds. I live at 114 Alexander Parade. I'm concerned that the size of the building will overshadow my garden, the backyard. It's a really lovely small space. I grow things there. The afternoon sun is really important. I'm just guesstimating how big a 7-storey building will be, judging by the roof of the pub that I can see from my garden. it'll completely ruin the heritage value, the livability of the space. Yeah, so I'm just here to object on those grounds.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next person is Faye Rice. Welcome, Faye. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Faye Rice. I'm Westgarth Street, Young Street and Cecil Street complex. Whilst we need more housing, we have to think of people's well-being, and this isn't being taken into consideration. This is a building that's going to be completely out of proportion with the rest of the area. There is going to be, as been said, overshadowing. People are going to be deprived of north light, and we know what that does, the deprivation of light to persons' well-being. There's no facility for garden or play or greenery, so we're building more and more house without any backyards, nowhere to play, and there's no compensation for that with new parks. The parking in Cecil Street is horrendous now. Cars go down the one-way street the wrong way every day. We have a driveway and it takes several manoeuvres to get into the driveway because of cars being parked so close. There are a lot of permits, but not parking places. And the other thing, the pub, the Royal Derby, is a community pub. They have live music, and there is so many precedents of live music being stopped by new residents, and also exhaust fans from kitchens, and people have pubs having to stop cooking. And the other thing is the water. We know this is a green council. We know that we get downpours now, not drizzle and rain, and the water that comes from, say, Victoria Parade down the hill, where is it going to go? Now, the streets flood. There have been accidents on the corner of Young Street and Westgarth Street with the gutter filling underneath the plane trees, people falling. So I'd just like to say that I think the well-being of the community is more important than a huge building. Thank you.
Thank you, Faye. The next person is Travis Thompson.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I live at 109 Cecil Street, just about 20-25 metres east of the proposed development. My main objection is the size, the height. I'd prefer it to be compliant with DDO 29 and being under 20.8 metres. The overlooking of the apartments directly into people's private courtyards is a problem. Overshadowing, particularly in winter, the size of this building is going to cast a huge shadow over the properties to the east. Yeah, that's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Travis. Yuka Takinaka. Hopefully I haven't mispronounced your name.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank
Do
you.
I get 10 minutes because I have Sebastian's spot as well?
No.
Okay.
So your 5 minutes start now.
Thank you. Thanks, councillors, for the opportunity to speak tonight as a Fitzroy resident, and I also object to the development based on the impracticality of the proposed plans for and around the apartment building. I'm a resident of 101 Cecil Street, which is right next to the proposed development, and my house is separated only by a narrow historic bluestone laneway, which measures 3.2 metres in width. I would like to address the traffic impact of the right-of-way. The physical entrance to this laneway is severely restricted by the distance between the utility pole on Cecil Street and the edge of the crossover. It measures at 3.6 metres. With a car parked on the last spot of the Cecil Street before the laneway, it becomes physically impossible for a standard vehicle, let alone a commercial truck, to turn in or out of the laneway in a single manoeuvre, and this could lead to heavy congestion during peak periods. There's nothing on the plans to suggest the crossover will be widened to accommodate this turning radius and narrow angle. And with the proposed vehicle entrance to the building in the right-of-way, we go from barely any traffic to 199 vehicles, according to the traffic report, entering the right-of-way each day, which does not include 4 daily garbage trucks. These vehicles will need to make multi-point turns to navigate the entry and will be a nightmare, as you can imagine, for the community and the residents living in and around the area, because this includes reversing, beeping, and revving their engines right outside my bedroom, living room, and home office on the Bluestone Laneway. In addition, it will become a huge bottleneck because the entry point to Fitzroy, at the top end of Fitzroy on Brunswick Street, from Alexandra Parade is already a very busy road, and so this compromises our community's safety and living premises. And this narrow laneway is not just a road, it's a utility corridor for my home. All of my essential services, gas, water, electricity, and NBN, they run exposed down the exposed wall of the laneway. And with such a tight squeeze, our services and property will likely be damaged, and we fear the very real safety and fire hazard this poses. We do not have to bear the cost of repairing our vital services or property simply because the developer is trying to force commercial traffic into a laneway, and this is clearly not fit for purpose. We also strongly object to the design of the ground floor commercial space because this shows large commercial windows directly facing into our lounge and dining room across the hallway, allowing retail workers and customers to look directly into our private family living areas. And we propose the entry, if this should proceed, the entry and glazing of these commercial spaces should be oriented to Brunswick Street, which is already an established boulevard. The issue of overlooking is also severe, and the developer's plans rely heavily on planter boxes to stop and screens to stop 35 apartments looking into my backyard and bedroom skylights. These screens will still allow downward line of sight from the heights proposed to the houses along the north side of Cecil Street, and this heavily compromises the privacy of several residents on Cecil Street and Alexandra Parades, relying on plants. So and finally, we address the height of this building in relation to the developer's parking waiver. So they're proposing 7 stories, cramming 35 apartments and over 900 square meters of commercial space, and yet they're asking council to waive 17 statutory car parking spaces, providing only 54 spaces where 71 are legally required, and this is clearly a case of overdevelopment. If a building is so tall and dense, it cannot fit into the statutory parking requirements required for its own footprint, we think the building is simply too big for its site. And the existing 1-hour parking zones will be completely overrun by this overspill of residents, retail staff, and visitors. And so we request the council change parking on Cecil Street, especially between Yonge and Brunswick, to permit-only zone for existing residents to protect us from this overspill. In conclusion, I think this proposal is trying to squeeze a massive commercial scale density into a site that relies on a tiny residential laneway to function. It compromises our safety, our privacy, and our streets' parking capacity. It is not an ideal candidate for the proposed apartment development, and I really question the practicality of these plans and the reality the residents will have to put up with if this development proceeds, as there are obvious flaws in the proposed plans. We seek your support to enforce the limits of this site.
30 seconds.
And heavily amend these plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuka. Karen Mulieris.
I'm a proxy for Karen, and I have formalised that with the governance officer.
Just wait. Don't talk yet. I've got you down here for Stephen Val, Carrie Chancredi, George Sikidalis, but not for Karen.
I did send in my email that Karen wanted me to represent her. She does.
So are you going to speak on behalf of all of those 4 people now?
Yeah,
yep.
Not right now, no, separately. They each get their share of time.
Well, hang on. You can't speak for 20 minutes at a PDC meeting, sorry.
Well, I'll make it quick on each one.
Just hold on. No. It's not just you just telling me that. There's strict rules tonight, and I can't override them just because I like you and I know you.
No,
So I just want to ask you a simple question. Please try to answer me. You've already spoken for yourself. You've got your 5 minutes.
Yes.
Who else are you claiming to want to speak for tonight?
The licensee of the Royal Derby Hotel, Tancredi, the owner, George, Karen has asked me, and also Stephen Vale has asked me. And I did send an email about it to your governance officer, Patrick O'Gorman, and he asked me to, I spoke to him about it, and he told me to email him by the end of yesterday, which I did.
How long are you going to take?
Sorry?
How long will you be speaking for?
Well, I'll try to be brief. Some of these issues
No,
have
but
been
can you be
covered.
specific? I need specificity. You can't,
Well,
like
let's
that could be an hour.
Just have about maybe 3 minutes for each person or something. Maybe 5 minutes for the hotel. I think that's an important one.
Okay.
Karen only has a couple of additional issues to the rest of us. Okay, all right. So Karen Mulliaris has been at 102 Cecil Street for 16 years with her 3 children. She's an owner-occupier. She has a double-fronted Victorian terrace on the north side of Cecil Street. Her kitchen living area is on the 2nd floor with a courtyard. She's overlooked by the residences' balconies on the south side of the development and requests that screens be added there for 1.8 height and not to rely on plantings. So that's the 2 apartments near the corner on the south side of the development on Cecil Street. As her 2 bedrooms are at the front of the house, she's also concerned about noise from traffic into the laneway, and that's pretty much it. Karen's concerns have been addressed by the rest of...
So keep going, please.
Keep going with the rest? Okay. Kane Tancredi, the licensee of the Royal Derby Hotel, who's been the licensee since, I think, 2012. He's concerned that Yarra has said to be championing live music, and yet his business, he feels, will be jeopardised by the noise complaints that will ensue from this development. The bedrooms are all on the north side, facing his courtyard, and he asks that they definitely have double glazing and suitable framing, acoustic framing. I know there's some council specifications around that. It hasn't been finalised. Also, he says that they definitely have live music. There's been a lot of talk about whether it does or doesn't have live music. It also has entertainment and amplified music when they have live sport events. His licence conditions allow him to have music when there is entertainment until 3 a.m. and 1 a.m. as normal course of business when there isn't entertainment, and apart from the Good Friday exemption there. He recently was visited by Liquor Licensing Victoria, and they gave him a licence for the grand final for 450 patrons rather than the 350 that he's normally allowed to have, including 40 in the courtyard. They suggested that he update his licence and now permanently ask for 450 patrons at the hotel and increase the limit on the courtyard. That is his plan, and that he's been given a go-ahead by Liquor Licensing Victoria for that, though that is not actually done yet. He says that the acoustic report should be done ideally during warmer days. I know there are going to be some more acoustic testing done at the hotel because it was inadequate previously by the developer. And it would be ideal if it could be done on sport event days when there are a maximum number of patrons. He's asked that, what else? Sorry, the double glazing, the setbacks. There are inadequate setbacks according to council reports on the north side. There are 3.2 and there is a planter encroaching on that. He wishes that to be rectified to 4.5, which is clause 15012. The exhaust fan is another concern for him. His kitchen exhaust fan, he says he's expecting some complaints on that due to noise and odour, and he's willing to have that recited at the expense of the developer, but that needs to happen. He says that there are often complaints by patrons regarding sewer smells from the outlet that's on Alexandra Parade, and that will be an issue for the residents of the development, though not his issue. On the accommodation issue, he says they only use it when there are no major events or when bands are there, live music, they are allowed to use the accommodation area.
30 seconds.
Okay. On the heritage issue, the hotel is listed on Heritage Victoria and cited with the City of Yarra Heritage Overlay as a substantial, significant building. And he believes that the modern design does not suit the heritage of the hotel, that it's basically a pizza with a lot. There are too many different surface treatments, too many competing design elements, curves, brutalist straight lines, and this is an issue for him.
That's 3 minutes for that one up.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, that's
you want to go on to the next person,
Yep.
please?
So then there's the owner of the hotel. Okay, we've got George Sineklis, whose family is Greek migrants. They bought the hotel in 1988. He's the trustee and owner for his whole family. He says that he has concern for the viability of the hotel due to noise complaints from the development residents, including the construction period. He says that will be a serious problem for them. And he's asked also about the setbacks on the north side, on the bedroom windows, double glazing, acoustic frames. 3.2 is inadequate. He wants the 4.5 and no planters encroaching on that setback. He says that he would like the windows on the north side not to affect any redevelopment options for the future if the hotel fails, which he thinks it will, on noise complaints and the exhaust fan issues. Right, he says that the heritage listing is not respected in the design, and he requires more sensitive treatment on the north side, attached the wall on the north side, which is next to the hotel. Also, he believes that the height dominates the hotel and its heritage issues. Okay, that's that. Next. Would you like me to do the next? Okay, Stephen
Please,
Vale. Yeah. Stephen Vale is the owner-occupier of 126 Cecil Street. His main concerns were around the dangers of extra traffic on Cecil Street and the laneway causing further traffic, dangers to the recently redeveloped park. He says that children, families often now use the road because the footpath's too narrow, and that there will be more danger if there's further traffic in that area. He doesn't agree with the height. He says 4 stories is plenty for that building. He'd like that to be reduced by at least 2 stories. The flood issue. He's concerned about his actual unit, which is opposite the Fitzroy, the back of the Fitzroy, the wall, which was like a dam in 2003. His unit actually totally flooded, and all the carpets in those units had to be removed, and they lost a lot of their furniture in that event. So he's concerned and thinks that Melbourne Water, that the issue around the flooding should be addressed, which is not part of this application, except that this development does encroach on that further, and that it plays into the exit and entry of the car park, and he believes it's not suitable on the laneway, and that the drainage issue should not prevent that from being resited onto Cecil Street. That's pretty much that. Okay, I think I'm done.
Thank you, Belinda.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anyone else who's ready to speak who hasn't spoken yet on this matter? No. Thank you, Belinda. Could you just turn that, Belinda?
Yep, turn the mic off.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Cheers. First up, councillors, any questions to officers? Councillor Gomez. Officers, yeah, come to the front. Thank you, please. Councillor Gomez, we're waiting for you.
So, to the officers, Ms Parsons mentioned a couple of issues about noise complaints. So condition 71 in the officer report, how does that meet the requirements that have been raised by the objectors?
Thank you, Councillor, through you, Chair. Are you referring to paragraphs in the officer report?
Yes, I've got it at page 40 of the agenda, number 71, the live music and entertainment venue clause about noise-sensitive residential use. I'll read it out. Pursuant to clause 53.06-3, a noise-sensitive residential use must be designed and constructed to include acoustic attenuation measures. A couple of residents have talked about complaints to and froing, I guess, between the Royal Derby and residents. I'm just wondering how that condition satisfies or not the issues raised.
Yes. So
Thank you, Councillor Gomez. Officers, yeah.
So the conditions that have been drafted in the recommendation require further acoustic testing, taking into account the fact that the Royal Derby Hotel is a live music venue.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we've got a suggested way forward from myself and Councillor Crossland. The officers are going to put the combined motion, composite motion, on the, it's there in yellow. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Crossland. Are there any other motions that I'm hearing from the other 4 councillors here tonight? Okay, well then, Mrs. Velosa, if you just time me, because just as much as I busted Belinda there, I've got to be timed as well. I'll speak to this. The dilemma for the council, as you would have seen, 1/3 of tonight's agenda items are DTP referrals. In other words, developers have run off to the state government who've taken these matters out of the hands of council, out of the democratic will of the people, and they just ask us for our opinion on it. So basically, they can throw that in the bin. This is one of the few, increasingly few, developments that, that we've got some control over. So we've got a dilemma. Either we can go all meek and mild in the hope that if we're just really soft and agree with everything the developer wants, that the state government will go, oh, we'll give them democracy back because they're doing what they want them to do. Or we can stay staunch and say what we actually think about this development. I've got to tell you, we're going to do the latter. So just a couple of things in terms of what, first of all, we've got to work to the local and Yarra planning scheme. It's not just the vibe, what we like, what we don't like. I live in Argyle Street. I know this area really, really well. If you ask me my personal opinion about the design, I could give you that, and it probably wouldn't be very nice, but we have to work to planning law, very strict planning law. So just going through some of the issues. The Royal Derby, you've got nothing to worry about. We're bringing in a live music precinct along with Port Phillip Council. They will be protected. You could have Woodstock 2027 at the Royal Derby, and no one can say boo about it. 15A3 of the report goes over that. In terms of inclusionary zoning, somebody asked about that. We would love to have the power to force developers to bring in inclusionary zoning, percentage of low-cost housing. We don't have that right. The construction management stuff, that's a separate process. Nobody on this development will get any, parking permits, visitor permits, or anything like that, because it's built after 2004, so that's nothing to worry about. Changing the permit in the local parking permit rules in the local area, all you have to do is contact me as ward councillor, and I'll talk to the officers, and we can probably roll those out. We can't put the entry-exit point on Brunswick Street because we won't get allowed by the state government because it's a tram line. That's just basically like a non-starter. So what are we going to do? Well, this motion takes 4.2 metres off the height of this building. So it'll be down to 25.09. And the reason, down to 20.8. And the reason we're doing that is because that brings it into line with DDO 29. We've done blood, sweat and tears, the officers, the community, on DDO 29. We're not going to walk away from that. So that's going to reduce the height. The other thing that this motion does, and I'm going to leave Councillor Crossland's additions to himself, is an upper level setback, including balconies and other projections of 8 metres to Brunswick Street and 6 metres to Cecil Street from level 2 upwards, a 4.5 metre setback from the northern boundary where habitable room windows are proposed, 1.5 high screens for the east-facing level 1 balconies replaced with 100% solid material and minimum 30 centimetre high louvers above the screen, which allows outward views and prevent downward views, with overlooking diagrams to demonstrate this. The other additions are Councillor Crossland, so I'll leave him to talk to them. Councillor Crossland.
Thank you, and thank you for the outlining of all the different matters that community members have raised this evening. So further to what's been mentioned, I'll just touch on matters that I've raised. So the northern and southern upper levels to be further articulated, and the intention with that is so that it's a more interesting building to look at, because right now the design could be so much more, and we know that things are not necessarily going to be built up to the sides there, so we want to make sure it's something nice to look at. We're wanting to make sure that the southeast corner lower levels are chamfered similarly to the southwest corner, so if you're entering that laneway, it's easier to do so. You've got better line of sight if you're a pedestrian or cyclist using that laneway as well. We're wanting to see some glazing provided to the stairwell when it gets to upper levels, so that it's a more inviting and accommodating place to be. And that includes seeking to have the stairwells accommodated in an unenclosed manner, because when they're enclosed, people are less likely to use them, and they present crime prevention through environmental design issues. wanting to make sure that we can get the best possible outcome in terms of the bicycle parking, making sure there's adequate provision, that there's enough bicycle parking that's at level so you can easily get it in. If you've got an e-bike, it's not too heavy, you can park it easily and nicely, and that there's capacity for cargo bikes and bikes with trailers. That primarily sums up the matters that I've specifically identified further to what the Mayor has already touched on. And I just wanted to end with thank you so much for everyone that has made submission on this evening. It really is appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Crossan. Any other councillor like to speak on this matter? No? Therefore, there's no right to reply. I put it to the vote. All those in favour of the composite motion, please raise your hand. That is passed unanimously. Officers, before everybody leaves on this matter, can you please explain what happens from here on in?
Through you, Chair. A notice of decision to grant a permit will issue, and that'll be forwarded on to all the objectors. The objectors have up to 21 days to appeal that decision, and of which thereafter, if no appeal is lodged with the tribunal, it will proceed to a planning permit. Thank you.
Thank you. So everybody who's come here for 4:30, 4:44, you're very, very welcome if you've got no life to stay here for the rest of the meeting. But you can leave now if you want to, and we'll move on to the second agenda item. It's just 246 Nicholson Street, Fitzroy. So we might start that in about 30 seconds, just to allow anyone who wants to leave to leave. Okay, we'll get cracking. The first registered speaker for 246 Nicholson Street, representing the applicant, is Joe Fisher from Human Habitats. Joe, welcome. And you'll have 5 minutes. Don't forget to please to press that button.
Okay. Good evening, councillors. My name is Joe Fisher. I'm from Human Habitats, and I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak this evening. On behalf of the permit applicant and landowner, I'd like to begin by thanking council officers for their thorough and balanced assessment of the application. We appreciate the constructive engagement with officers throughout the process, which has resulted in a recommendation for approval that responds to the issues raised during the assessment and represents an appropriate planning outcome for the site. This application seeks approval for the redevelopment of the site with an 8-storey commercial building, including office floor space and ground level food and drink premises, along with basement car parking access from the rear laneway. The site is currently underutilised as a car wash, and the proposal represents the appropriate renewal of a prominent site with excellent access to public transport, services and amenities. The proposal will deliver a high-quality architectural outcome that reflects the industrial history of Fitzroy through facade composition and through considered material palette. The design has been subject to independent urban design review by MGS Architects, which was supportive of the design response, subject to little recommendations, or some minor recommendations. Those recommendations have been incorporated in the plans that are reflected in the plans before you, and to demonstrate clear alignment with the independent urban design advice. Advertised to 660 parties, the proposal received a modest 19 objections, generally relating to traffic and parking, built form and amenity impacts. These matters have been carefully considered through the assessment process and our written responses to submissions. In relation to traffic and parking, a detailed traffic and car parking demand assessment confirms that the site's exceptional access to tram routes, cycling infrastructure and the surrounding activity centre supports a reduced parking provision. However, since the time of public notice, Amendment VC 277 has been gazetted, changing the parking provisions and removing the planning permit trigger for a parking reduction, further supporting the appropriateness of the proposal, given we are no longer seeking a reduction in parking. With respect to built form, the proposal has been refined following both submissions and referral comments, including setbacks to upper levels, additional screening, landscaping, improvements to the public realm interface, ensuring that the building represents an appropriate scale and transition to surrounding properties. Other amenity matters such as overlooking streetscape presentation, waste, ESD and servicing have also been addressed through plan changes and permit conditions, and these are reflected in the officer recommendation before you tonight. It is also important to note the proposal's strong alignment with the proposed planning scheme amendment C271 Yarra. The draft controls anticipate a mid-rise character generally in the order of 6 to 9 stories along Nicholson Street with a defined street wall and recessed upper levels. The proposal sits comfortably within that framework and delivers the type of built form outcome the amendment is intended to facilitate. The officer report ultimately concludes that the proposal provides an appropriate built form outcome, achieves acceptable amenity interfaces, delivers active frontage to Nicholson Street, and makes efficient use of the well-located site without creating unreasonable impacts on surrounding properties. We commend the planning officer on this conclusion. So in summary, the proposal is supported by the officer recommendation, has been reviewed through independent urban design advice, aligns with the strategic direction of Amendment C271 Yarra, and represents an appropriate renewal outcome for a key site. For those reasons, we respectfully request that the committee support the officer recommendation and grant a permit / issue a notice of the decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Christina McRae from Urbis, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. I'm here this evening on behalf of the adjoining landowner to the south who made a submission in relation to the proposal. So that's north, a bit confusing, 260 Nicholson Street, which is to the north on the corner of Argyle Street. That property is a smaller property. It is an older building stock and something that would be subject to renewal and redevelopment, hopefully at some stage in the future. And while the submission did not object in principle, we're just seeking a very minor change to the plans just to make sure that there's a sort of more proactive management of the interface between the properties. So the council officer addresses the equitable development opportunities at paragraph 134 and 135 and just comments on the robust interface between them, and that's largely right. We just seek that where the level 3 terrace abuts the property at 260 Nicholson Street, rather than having an open end on that terrace on the common boundary, that wall be extended up to the full height of that level. And the purpose of that is just to manage that interface in the future and give the best opportunity for development of 260 Nicholson Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. So you're asking, can I just, because you're the last speaker from Lauren, just those of you who've got the agenda in front of you, Lauren is not coming from Adelaide tonight. She's one of the objectors, so thank you, Christina. Maybe just questions to the officers. I'd like to start. That last point from Christina from Urbis in terms of the level 3 property and that extra condition I guess she's looking for. Could I get some thoughts from officers on that particular request, please?
Thank you, Chair. Because the terrace is proposed to an office use, officers don't consider that it's a sensitive interface like it would be if it was a balcony to a dwelling, for example. Don't believe that an increase in height is required to protect the equitable development rights of the adjoining property, and also a condition that increases a wall height on a boundary is not usually an approach we take without having considered whether there are any other off-site amenity impacts as a result of that change.
So I'm correct in saying you've considered this idea prior to tonight's. This is not the first time you've heard this.
No, we saw an email with some of that detail.
Yeah, no. Thank you. Are there any other questions to officers? Okay, so can the governance officers please put on the screen let's just do the same thing as we did the last one. It's two composite alternative motions, two complementary, one from myself and one from Councillor Crossland. We've spoken prior to the meeting. They overlap, they don't contradict. So I'd suggest we move in the same direction as we did last time. I'll move it and Councillor Crossland second it, if that's okay with him. If any of the councillors want to add an additional amendment or take out an amendment or take on the point that Ms. McRae raised from Urbis, now is the time to do that. You're happy with just keeping it as it is? Yep, okay, me too. All right then, well, I'll move this motion that's on the agenda, that's on the screen, I should say. So basically, it's obviously a big change if you live on the west side of Argyle Street near Nicholson Street, if you're living on Nicholson Street itself, and all the little minor streets in and around there. It's a major change. It'll be the first of many. There'll be other large applications in and around that vicinity. We know that. It is a commercial zone, and it's surrounded by across the road in the west side of Nicholson Street, the developments around the public housing estate and the new non-public housing high-rises that have developed there. So I think in general terms, it's a reasonable development for the site. However, I want to make my contribution to this motion makes two changes. At the level 3 east facing terrace setback 1 metre from the north boundary, and also the provision of 2 additional EV charging bays in the basement. I think with those two measures, including the ones that you're about to hear from Councillor Crossland, I think it adds to this development. And on that basis, I'm happy to support the officer recommendation with the suite of changes. Councillor Crossland in seconding the motion.
Thank you. Further to everything that the Mayor has outlined, the changes that I've got here, including making sure that we've got a minimum of 50% of bicycle parking being horizontal, so it's easy to use and access. We want to see that the northern and southern boundary walls are further articulated, so it's a more interesting building to look at because it may be many years before development occurs next door, or it may not occur at all. And also really keen to see more vertical greenery and making sure that we have the systems in place to maintain that, because right now there's not a lot of it and we'd like to see more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crossland. Would anyone else like to speak on this matter? Okay, I'll put the motion to the floor. If you're in favour, please raise your hand. That is passed unanimously. Officers, can you please let everyone know what happens from here on in, please?
Through you, Chair. A notice of decision to grant a permit will issue with the alternate recommendation as depicted on the screen. That decision will be forwarded on to the objector parties who will have 28 days to appeal that decision, in which case if there's no appeal lodged with the tribunal, a permit will issue. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who came here for the Nicholson Street item. You can leave now if you want to, or you can stay. We'll move on to 5.3, 1453 Copland Street, Richmond, the gym. Welcome everybody who's here for that matter. The first person I've got down to speak, the applicant, Martin de Gager and Abby McCarthy, Prestige Town Planning. Yeah, come up together, and I don't know if you're both speaking or one of you speaking, but you can fill us in. Don't forget to press the button so we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Abby McCarthy and I work at Prestige Town Planning. We represent the applicant being Anytime Fitness Richmond, and we are in support of the officer's recommendation for approval. The proposal is for the relocation of the existing Anytime Fitness located on the ground floor to the first floor. The new tenancy will allow for increased gym floor area and state-of-the-art gym equipment. We understand that there are concerns regarding 24-hour uses. However, I would like to emphasise the gym's strong operational history. The gym has been open and operating for approximately 14 years with only 3 complaints. One of the complaints turned out not to be caused by the gym. That leaves 2 complaints. These 2 complaints have been resolved accordingly and sustainably with no further complaints received since.
Thank you. Martin?
Evening all. My name is Martin.
Sorry, just before you, Abby, can you just turn the microphone off? Just an echo otherwise. Thank you.
Evening all. My name is Martin Yarra. I'm Managing Director and also Qualified Town Planner at Prestige Town Planning. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to be able to address the panel. We understand there's been a number of objections raised against the gymnasium and mostly related to noise advertising procedure, which was conducted via Council's service regarding the location of the gymnasium as well, we emphasise again that this gymnasium's been in this location for 14 years with minimal complaints, which had all been resolved, which is a testament to the positive operations of the gym operator. I'd also like to bring to the attention that the owner of this business is also a multi-site operator and is governed by the franchise head office under strict requirements in meeting acoustic parameters and safety and security measures as well. With regards to the objections, there had been raised some concern over foot traffic for people, and we'd like to raise that after 10 p.m. at night, the operational data of the existing facility shows that there are between 2 to 3 members per hour until the peak period picks up from 5 a.m., with the peak being at between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, again with a peak after hours at 5 p.m. in the afternoon. A thorough acoustic testing had been conducted at the site, and the acoustic engineers who assisted with this testing has extensive knowledge in the testing of gymnasiums, as they've done hundreds of anytime fitness gymnasiums as well. There had been some concern raised over insufficient details of noise emanating from music and classes. We support the officer's recommendation that there's no group classes of any kind proposed to be held on the site, and none are to be implemented either. Music will be set to a set decibel level, which is tested prior to opening and also tested to see that it does achieve compliance, and locked in the manager's office in the comms area, which is not accessible by members and therefore can't be increased. We might add as well that the client is willing to set a automatic dimming device onto the music, which will automatically reduce the music level, and that most patrons attending the gyms these days work out with headphones in. All cardiovascular and other machinery have individual television screens that allows connectivity to the system, and the music is heard via headphone systems. Therefore, only background noise or background music play throughout the gym to create a level of ambience. Another objection raised inappropriate location of the neighbourhood, character impacts of the gym, and that it would be better suited in a commercial area or a main road in town. Although we contest this claim, as the gym has been there for 14 years. And the primary intent of the relocation is not to drive additional memberships, but rather to better cater for existing members by giving a wider variety of workout equipment, and therefore servicing the current existing member base in a more sufficient manner.
Thank you, Abby and Martin. Appreciate it. The next person is James Tucker. Welcome, James. Just press the button and you've got 5 minutes.
I live at 68A Cobden Street on the western side of Cobden Street, immediately opposite the site of the current application. My main concern is with regard to light spill, particularly from the ground floor illuminated sign, as my front bedroom window is immediately opposite and at approximately the same level as the ground floor sign. There are a number of different illuminated signs on the western face of the Cubo building, and each of them appear to have different conditions with regard to illumination times and or illumination levels. From a resident's perspective, it's a little difficult to understand the rationale for these differences. The officer recommendation is to apply different conditions to the 2 proposed illuminated signs, with the first floor sign being switched off at 11 p.m, but the ground floor sign opposite my house to remain illuminated 24/7, albeit with dimmed levels overnight. I'd like to encourage the council to use this current application as a step towards standardising the conditions for all of the illuminated signs on the western face of the Cubo building to hopefully simplify future applications, and provide more clarity and certainty for both residents and for business tenancies. My suggestion is to standardise the conditions for both proposed signs and align them with the existing Brennan IT sign, which I understand is dimmed at twilight, again at night time, and then switched off between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. I would personally prefer for the sign opposite my house to be switched off earlier at 10 p.m, which is the time that the existing sign is currently being switched off. But if a compromise solution for all of the signs being switched off by 11 p.m. results in a degree of standardisation and consistency for all existing and potentially future illuminated signs on the western face of the Cubo building, then I'd hope that this would be a fair outcome for all parties. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Councillors, just turn that off if you don't mind, Chair. Thank you. Thanks very much. Councillors, have we got any questions to the officers? Councillor Deputy Mayor Harrison?
The question's actually for the applicants.
The applicant? Yeah, can one or both of you come to the front? No, to the applicant.
Sorry, the applicant.
Yeah. You've just bought the property in the last 20 seconds. That solves a lot of problems.
Good compromise.
Deputy Mayor Harrison?
Okay, so I understand several of the objections raise noise issues, and from what I've gathered from the feedback they've provided to me, there has been changes made over time so that you've mentioned that the gym's actually been there for 14 years. I just wanted to ask, and I haven't been able to ascertain that from the officers or the application documentation, about what you're proposing now with the acoustics report and suggested conditions, how that differs, or maybe it's the same. I'm just seeking to understand whether that might be an improvement on what currently is in place.
Absolutely. With the gymnasium currently on the ground floor level and quite outdated in terms of flooring solutions, we are proposing to install more robust flooring solution systems, which had progressed over the years and in quality, and so there's an array of not only flooring solutions, there's acoustic baffling that will be placed on the ceiling, hanging down from the ceiling. There's also the plan of management and the management practices, which goes hand in hand with the physical noise abatement measures. Whilst the gym is unstaffed and a complaint is received, the first thing that staff is required to do in the morning is to investigate the matter, consult the CCTV system, then identify any members that would have been present in the gym at that time, that identify if there were any wrongdoing. That member will get a formal written warning in the first instance. Second offence would be a membership termination for a 6-month period, and on the third occasion their membership would be terminated, meaning also that they can't attend any Anytime Fitness in Australia at all.
Deputy Mayor Harrison?
So I think, judging from the conditions that are proposed to be applied around the use of weights and how heavy those weights can be, is that the main driver of complaints that you receive?
The number of, we haven't received an enormous amount of complaints over the course of the existence of the gymnasium. If that is the primary source of the complaints, it is certainly member-specific, because keep in mind that any member that accesses the facility can be identified via their unique key fob, and then also via facial recognition, but via their picture in the membership application, and those members can then be singled out and addressed accordingly.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Any other questions at this stage to anyone? Okay, I'm looking. You can. Thanks very much. I'm looking for a suggested way for Deputy Mayor Dr. Councillor Harrison.
I have a motion with some amendments. The alternate motion that's just up on screen now. So. Shall I speak to that?
Just before you do, we've got a seconder. Yep. Councillor Astor.
Okay, so the First additional condition is around restricting the lift and stairs access to gym patrons to the ground and first floor, addressing some feedback that has been provided by submitters. The other one is addressing the feedback that's been provided by the submitter this evening, that all signage may only be illuminated between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday to Sunday. So that would be replacing the previous conditions 21 and 22.
The Secretary, do you want to speak to that?
I'll simply say that we've had similar concerns from other gyms that opened in my ward, in Langridge ward, and we found that the gym proprietors were actually really, really amenable to making these lighting changes to their signs. So I hope that they're equally amenable in this instance.
Any other councillors? Councillor Gomez?
Through you, Mayor, thank you. I just want to make a general comment that we should support small business in Yarra. I'm a member of Anytime Fitness. I mean, I look like it, but I am. I can comment on the fact that management is very responsive to complaints from the community. So the gym I'm at has a second floor. People do drop weights there. It's quite loud and you can feel the vibration on the floor. It's an old building. But I do commend the management team at Anytime Fitness to try and do their best to try and resolve some customer complaints. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Do you want to exercise your right of reply? Okay, I put it to the floor. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. That is passed unanimously. Officers, can you please explain to everyone who's here for this agenda item in 53 Common Street as to what happens from here on in, please?
Through you, Chair, from here, notice of decision to grant a planning permit will be issued, subject to the changes of the conditions outlined on the screen there. Objectors have 28 days and applicant has 60 days to appeal to VCAT should they not agree with the decision.
Thank you all. You can stay or go, but if you want to go, do it now before we go to the next agenda item. The next agenda item, by the way, is 1 to 5 Sanders Place, Richmond. We've got, the first speaker is Robert Carletti from Tract. Robert, welcome.
Great. Good evening, Lord Mayor and councillors. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank the council officers who have assisted with the assessment of this application. They've worked very diligently and collaboratively with us, whilst also making a considerable effort to finalise the recommendation before you tonight. As the delegate report notes, it's been 1 year, or just about 1 year, since I sat here and made a submission last year about this same matter, and council elected to issue a notice of decision subject to conditions. Since this time and through the intervening VCAT process, various changes have been made to the proposal to address council and the community comments. This includes reducing the overall size of the building, or the gross floor area of the building above ground by about 250 square metres, which is just under 15% of the building. That's been achieved through providing a 1 metre upper level setback from level 3 and above to the northern boundary with the driveway at 7 Sanders Place, providing a 1.5 metre upper level setback to the southern boundary to Sanders Place, inclusion of additional planters, addition of a chamfer at the southern southeastern corner of the building. And in addition to those changes, we've also made other changes such as including additional planters in the roof area where the setbacks are, further recessing the services enclosure on the rooftop to have a 1.7 metre setback to the driveway, implementation of additional screening measures to prevent overlooking to surrounding residential properties, and additional landscaping and canopy trees within the eastern setback. These are in addition to the considerable changes that were made through the application process that was before council and lodged in 2024, as well as the changes made since last year's council meeting to address the requirements of the notice of decision. Importantly, these changes have secured the support of some of our neighbours who reside alongside in adjoining properties on Brighton Street, who had previously objected to the application. We request tonight that you resolve again to support the proposal, but with the deletion of the proposed conditions 1A and 1B relating to deleting the top floor and increasing the upper level setbacks. In relation to the height, the proposal achieves a mid-rise character consistent with what the requirements for the Design and Development Overlay Schedule 53 include. The top floor is small in size. It's sited towards the non-sensitive western boundary, adjoining an 11-storey approval. There is minimal overshadowing to the adjoining backyards, and the top floor appears recessive given its significant setbacks to the residential properties and because it is substantially smaller than the level directly below it. The exceedance in the discretionary height control is 2.5 metres, and Council's strategic planning team has supported the proposed building height. As I noted, the amended proposal also includes upper level setbacks, which were previously not included as a part of the application. The context of the site is unique compared to the typical interface between commercial properties and residential properties along Church Street. At its northern boundary, the interface is with 7 Sanders Place is defined by a communal driveway, which acts similar to the way in which a laneway would act. The setback controls within the DDO 53 have anticipated an interface where a commercial property backs onto the backyard of a residential property, but that's not the case in this instance. The dwellings at 7 Sanders Place do not have backyards, living areas or balconies with their primary outlooks towards our site. The building's been designed so that it tapers away from the northeastern corner, with setbacks increasing as the height rises. And in addition to there being no overshadowing impacts to these properties, given the location of the site south of them, this means that the upper level setback is appropriate within the context and again has been supported by Council's Strategic Planning Department, who wrote the proposed controls. Sanders Place is a laneway rather than a street with high numbers of pedestrians. Opposite to the south are commercial properties rather than residential properties. In this context, the 1.5 metre upper level setback is also appropriate. Lastly, we request the deletion of condition 1C, which requires a reduction of 4 car parking spaces. The proposal no longer requires a planning permit under clause 5206. It exceeds the minimum rate of 0 spaces and does not exceed the maximum rate of 17 spaces, therefore not requiring a planning permit.
30 seconds.
Thank you for your time and opportunity.
Thank you, Robert. The next person is Tony Melville.
It's on, is it?
It's already on, yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks,
it's hard not to be overwhelmingly overtaken by that wonderful, eloquent recitation you just had. I'm one of the Sanders Place in number 7 residents. There's 6 houses, and as was quietly pointed out before, this is an area where the residences meet the commercial buildings, and it's right in the middle where that transformation happens. So from my point of view, I'm not against any development, provided it fits within the council guidelines, and any additional encroachments I disagree with. However, my main issue is the sensitivity of this juxtaposition between the residences and the commercial area. When the access running north-south, which is giving access to this development, was created, it was created by an easement of carriageway and drainage, etc., but carriageway is the most important one. It was not envisaged that there would be such a dense development on that property. There were 3 properties, and one would assume that the use of that carriageway laneway would service 3 individual properties. The development proposed is much more than what was considered at the time, and I think the council officers should be mindful of the fact that, and this will happen many, many times in the future, the carriageway easements were designed for one thing when they were granted, but they need to be considered in the context of what development happens to ensure that they are relevant for what happens for the future development. And from my point of view as a citizen in 7 Sanders Place, we use that access area for our egress and ingress, and I'm concerned that the volume of traffic for deliveries and for people coming to the various places will be far more than what it was intended for in the first place. And whether this happens in this development or not, I think that's an item that ought to be considered with rights of carriageway. They shouldn't be just one size fits all. And in this development, it is already tight, and I think that the most important thing for me is with a commercial restaurant, for example, there will be deliveries day in, day out, deliveries and also rubbish collections more than weekly, which was, I think, if I was giving an easement 25 years ago, I would have thought there'd be one rubbish collection once a week. But now there may be more daily or even more than daily rubbish collections. And that is fine if you're just in a commercial area, but if you're in that area where commercial hits the residential area, it's very important. We've got a group of residents who are old like me, but also young with children, and the amenities will be diminished by that additional noise and traffic. I can't imagine that I can sit here with my hand on my heart and say to you that I won't be stopped getting out of my own driveway at some stage by some delivery truck. And I think that there could be consideration given as to whether all that type of activity could be done under the building as opposed to the outside of the building. So I won't go into the other bits and pieces which have been thoroughly digested before and eloquently expressed by the applicant's representative, but the issue of the purpose of a right of carriageway and what it's used for years after it's created ought to be considered in all future applications, and particularly this one. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tony. The next person, Jonathan Anderson and Tom Little. I think it's a joint thing.
Good evening, councillors. My understanding is this matter is already back before VCAT.
Just what's your name, please?
Jonathan Anderson.
Thank you. Are you an objector or an applicant, or?
I was an original objector.
Oh, yep.
I'm not an objector to the amended plans.
Okay,
as they
thank
stand,
you.
Right. My understanding is this matter is before VCAT again already, and so we seek to ask the council not to amend the plans any further than what they already have under the existing notice of decision.
Thank you, sir. Could you just turn that, if you don't mind, just turn that off. Thanks very much. Councillors, have you got any questions to officers? Have we got a suggested way forward on this matter? Councillor Crossland. I take it that's it on the screen. So it's the officer recommendation with those changes. Do you have a seconder for that? There's a seconder in the form of Deputy Mayor Harrison, is that correct? Yeah. My question to the officers is, are those conditions able to be included in the application? Yes? Very good. Okay, with that in mind, I'll ask Councillor Crossland to move his motion. You've got 3 minutes starting now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, I appreciate a number of the matters that were raised tonight by Smeda. Many of those are kind of outside the scope of what we might be able to do at this point in time. I've sought to review what's in front of us, the changes that have been made, and I feel there have been significant improvements to the design and where we're going with this. These two changes are to just make some further minor tweaks to improve the outcome for the experience of those looking at the building and also those using the building. Right now we have a facade that is primarily blank, and there is opportunity for it to be a much more interesting interface for the community to view. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Harrison? No. Anyone else like to speak on this matter? Okay, we put it to the floor. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That is passed unanimously. Officers, can you please let everyone know what happens from here on in, please?
So council will issue a notice of decision to grant a permit in accordance with the officer's recommendations and these two additional conditions. Objectors will have 28 days and the permit applicant will have 60 days to appeal the council's decision.
Thank you, everyone here for Sanders Place. We'll move right along to the first of the two DTP application reports. So the first one is the Clifton Hill one, 77 Noon Street and 112325 Rutland Street. First registered speaker is Mitchell Swan. Welcome, Mitchell. Just press that button when you get a chance and you 5 minutes, we'll start then.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Mayor and the Council for the opportunity to speak. I'd also like to thank the officers for their work preparing the reports. I'm here to represent the views of the Clifton Hill neighbourhood.
Sorry, Mitchell, is there any chance you could just shut that? I'll start that. We've stopped the clock. Yeah, don't worry. It was just we couldn't hear you because the noise was coming from there.
Not a problem. I'm here to represent the views of the Clifton Hill Neighbourhood Collective. We consist of more than 60 members that live in the immediate vicinity and 389 locals that have signed the petition in support of our views. Firstly, I'd like to highlight the group is fully supportive of public housing and even increasing the density of public housing on this site. However, we feel that the design poorly suits the needs and the character of the area. Honestly, we look forward to welcoming our returning and new neighbours, and we share the officer's observation that the design makes next to zero open space contributions, that it does provide are unsafe, and it does not provide opportunities for the community to socialise with the tenants. We would like the officer's report to be extended to reflect that once the long-standing playground, basketball court and green space is demolished, this site will become the least accessible place in the whole area for the residents of this building. Additionally, the DCPO exemption will completely transfer the costs of resolving this onto the council. We also support the officer's objection that the transition from single storage heritage on Rutland Street and the current 3-storey block to an 8-storey structure is abrupt and inconsistent with the heritage and character of Clifton Hill. We support the recommendation of a 6-storey limit, but would like to extend the recommendation to include the precedent concerns and the implementation of additional measures to blend the building in with the low-rise surrounds. However, we do disagree with the officer's report on parking and traffic. We appreciate the recommendation to move parking underground, but believe that the quantity assessment was based on flawed data provided by Homes Victoria. Residents will attest that peak parking demand is overnight, but the analysis was conducted between 2 and 4 p.m. on a Thursday. If anything, this evidences how many people in the area will rely on cars to commute to work and an increased need for parking. We would like the officer's recommendation amended to state that the design should meet the already reduced Clause 52 obligations, which is a minimum of 68 spaces. We would also like the report to note that all traffic to this site will come via Noon Street, and it doesn't make sense for the entrance to the car park to be on the opposite side, as it will create unnecessary traffic on Rutland and surrounding streets. Lastly, we wanted to comment on the consultation process, where our members felt that the online surveys were deceptively designed to capture positive feedback only, and people being told at the drop-in sessions that their feedback on certain items would not be regarded. Honestly, this approach feels Trumpian, with the state dictating and overriding local voices. We in Clifton Hill want better public housing outcomes and are not okay with the Allen government's anti-democratic approach to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitchell. Liam O'Boyle.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. My name is Liam O'Boyle. I live at 20 Rutland Street, directly opposite the site. I largely support the development and I agree with the officer recommendations on height and improving the usability of on-site open space. I do have a couple of amendments to request though. In regards to open space, shifting the building to the west, the officer report recommends improving the usability of on-site open space but doesn't specify how. The submission should recommend that the main building be shifted west, consolidating open space into a single usable area on the Rutland Street frontage, rather than distributing it in smaller pockets around the building. The proposed development has avoided doing this due to the train line proximity. However, that's not a hard constraint. Nightingale Village in Brunswick is well known and far closer to the train line than this proposal. The hub at 8 Garfield Street, Richmond is a Yarra-based example on the same principle. Consolidated open space is actually usable open space rather than what they've got. I'd also like to endorse Mitch's suggestion to relocate the car parking to Noon Street. The proposed vehicle access is immediately adjacent to a below-grade pedestrian and cyclist underpass with poor sightlines. At Council's December meeting, this Council's Northeast Link submission described those shared paths east of Hoddle, including this underpass, as key walking and cycling connections, but acknowledged that they are narrow, not lit, have poor amenity, and have several other safety issues, and recommended a road safety audit. The traffic engineering report, insofar as I saw it, because there were some appendices missing in the public version, I understand that officers did see a full version, didn't assess this interaction, so far as we could tell, between the proposed access and the underpass at all. A new vehicle crossing here without any assessment worsens the risk at a crossing that I use multiple times most days, 5 times so far today, and I'll use it again on the way home. And I often take that route with my 11-year-old daughter as well. Every vehicle accessing the site already passes through Noon Street, as Mitch has mentioned, whether they're coming from Rutland Street or along Alexander Parade East. They need to go through Noon to get there anyway. The Noon Street access point eliminates the underpass safety concerns and reduces vehicle movements on Rutland Street and Alexander Parade East, and avoids the additional infrastructure requirements that the developer engineers identified for the Alexander Alexandra Parade East crossings. I have another idea for this area as well that I've discussed with the community, which is perhaps helps mitigate the open space concerns, is that this dead end of Alexandra Parade East could potentially be reused, as has been done in some other places lately, for a pocket park if they don't put the access way there. But the access way would foreclose this possibility. So I ask that the council submission recommend relocating the car park access way to Noon Street. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Liam. Any questions, councillors, to officers? Councillor Crossland.
Thank you. It was just in regard to the last point that was made. Just wanted to confirm with officers, that would have to be a separate process if we were to look at the opportunity for that to become an open space in future, noting that it isn't, council is not the responsible authority for that land. It would be a separate process, correct?
Can you just come to the front to answer that? Only because we've got the microphone on and people can hear you watching online. Thank you. One of the buttons is on.
Through you, Chair, yes, that would be a separate process.
Councillor Gomez and then myself.
Through you, Mayor. Just it's a general question, maybe for governance. I fully support it, but in condition 2A, we do talk about our view that we should be supporting 100% public housing. Is that actually a planning matter for this amendment? Again, I'm happy to support it. I just want to make sure we don't fall foul of the issue.
Through you, Chair. So in terms of a planning assessment, the method of management of the development and the dwellings isn't a relevant planning consideration.
Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Gomez? No. My question, the current application is 8 stories. The officers are suggesting that in our submission we make it 6 stories. How many units would be lost, social housing units would be lost, if the state government listened to us and moved from 8 to 6 stories? Sorry, Liam, you don't get a second shot. Just if I let you do it, then every meeting, it'll be a dog's breakfast. But feel free to tell the councillors, the council officers, if you want to. All right, I don't think anyone will second guess Mr. O'Boyle, so 28 it is. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we're looking for a way forward. Councillor Crossland. So before you speak to it, can you just tell us briefly the gist of your alternate motion?
Yes, thank you. It supports the officer recommendations with several amendments. They include support for the redevelopment of the site, however, raises serious concerns if the proposal results in a loss of public housing and its replacement with community housing, and submits that the site should be redeveloped to provide 100% public housing. It does remove the reduction in height that is proposed by officers. That is to make sure that we don't have a loss in the amount of social housing that could be provided. It then goes on to touch on the rear laneway linear garden and the associated footpath having limited passive surveillance, and how this space will be poorly utilised, and the opportunity to consolidate this to facilitate a larger publicly accessible open space, which follows to the next point being that there is opportunity for the building massing to be adjusted to the west, smaller site open spaces to be consolidated to facilitate one larger publicly accessible open space, and that vehicular access via Alexandra Parade East is inconsistent with and will undermine the rail underpass upgrades associated with the North East Link, which Council has a position of support, and that vehicular access should be via Noon Street, that all dwellings must be Silver Standard building requirements, including the entrances being DDA compliant, and that there's an inadequate number of bicycle parking spaces that needs to be increased, that the stairwells be unclosed to common areas wherever possible, and that there be greater articulation to the north and south facades with an emphasis on enhancing passive surveillance, that common hallway widths be generously sized with a minimum dimension of 2 metres, and consideration be given to the provision, to the provision of a concierge, on-site building manager and co-located services.
Thank you. Have you got a seconder? I'll second it if no one else will. So back to you, Councillor Crossan. Now you've got 3 minutes to speak to your motion.
Thank you very much. Thank you first and foremost to submitters that have attended this evening, and also those that have emailed in and participated in this process. It's very much appreciated. Appreciating council is not the decision maker with this item. I think it's important that we put forward a strong position on what our position is on this matter. I think it's an exciting opportunity that this site be looked at and be redeveloped. However, it's incredibly important that we don't lose public housing through this. And I'm really keen to see that this redevelopment make sure that it is public housing and that council reiterates its support for no net loss of and an increase in the provision of public housing in the city of Yarra. Appreciating the concerns from some community members regarding the height. If we're looking at if we're looking at adjusting the design to provide more open space and making sure that we don't lose any of those social housing dwellings, I don't think we can put a cap on this. We've heard from community members that the rear laneway already has issues in terms of how it is utilised. There is a lack of passive surveillance. I can see that potentially being an issue with this linear space, which will be poorly utilised. There is a real opportunity to create a sizable open space on this site that could accommodate a playground, it could accommodate a full or half court basketball court, and really contribute back to the local community and the future residents of this development. The vehicular access, as has been touched on, is proposed via Alexander Parade East, which is completely inconsistent with the currently progressing works that North East Link are going to be undertaking. I love the idea that this could become a park in future. If vehicular access is there, it would undermine that opportunity. So hence why I think the vehicular access should be via Noon Street. It's not super clear looking at the plans whether the new dwellings will meet silver standard requirements, hence why there's an inclusion of a requirement for that. And as has already been touched on, it's clear that there's inadequate bicycle parking provision. One thing I thought was really interesting was that the hallway widths jump in and out at different points, squeezing down to 1.2 metres. That's incredibly narrow and completely inappropriate, particularly for a building that's meant to be for social housing. We need 2 metres for 2 people to comfortably pass each other in wheelchairs, and that's why I've asked for that minimum there. All in all, I hope this has my colleagues' support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crossan. In seconding the motion, I'll just add that it's got sort of the characteristics of those medieval discussions when clerics would get together and talk about how many angels live on the pin of a needle. It's absolutely meaningless, this discussion tonight, in a lot of ways. The state government own this land. The state government will decide on this land. They've asked the council to provide an opinion, as they have done for the next agenda item. They haven't given the council a single cent in dollars or in cents to analyse this work for them. So the officers have gone off at the expense of Yarra ratepayers and come back with a whole plethora of potential thoughts and ideas on this estate, for this site, that we know will go straight into the dustbin. And we're not being funded for it. So it's a form of planning cost shifting. So having said that, we might as well push back and just say, because I think everybody on this council, it's been, well, at least historically, we've had the position that we want good public housing. We don't want bad public housing, we want good public housing. Public housing is better for tenants than social housing for a whole range of reasons. We also are aware that there's a massive housing crisis, particularly for young people in this country. There's 80,000 plus people on the public housing waiting list, and millions, you could almost say millions of young people who are either couch surfing or in rental stress, who can't afford to pay rent. My kids were born and bred in this area. None of them can afford to live in this area. They're economic refugees from Yarra. It's way too expensive for any person in the 20s to rent, unless you're really, really lucky. In terms of buying in this area, mate, you might as well forget about it. Unless you're left a house or you're really, really lucky and you've got a really, really good job, for young people, it's just impossible. So the point about pulling in public housing is very, very important. In terms of the height, they want us to go, oh, let's just knock it down to 6 stories, because they'll go straight to the Age tomorrow morning and say these NIMBYs at council, they're putting the rich, nice, rich white people in Clifton Hill that I used to be one of. I lived there for 14 years, so I'm talking about myself here. And they're, you know, open space and have a little thing around the corner. Mate, and they're going to try and wedge us and say we're putting their interests ahead of tens and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Victorian kids who can't afford to rent. I'm not going to put our council in that position. By the way, I'll just be honest with you, I'm going to never get a vote in Clifton Hill again. It won't matter because I'm never standing there. If it was up to me, I would put 100 stories there. If it meant that 100 stories of young people who currently can't get a flat could get a flat, I would put it up there, because Clifton Hill's got plenty of open space. It'd be shit for anyone living on Rutland Street, but everywhere, you know, I'm being a bit silly, but for me, those needs are way more important than some of the issues that have been raised tonight. Having said that, what we think is totally immaterial. So I think this is a balanced approach from Councillor Crossland, and I'm happy to second it. That's my time up. Anyone else want to speak? Councillor Gomez, and yeah, you're next, Councillor Gomez.
Sorry. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers for doing the work. I reiterate everything that Councillor Crossland and Mayor Jolly has said. Our officers do an excellent job in looking at these decisions or these planning matters, knowing full well, as Mayor Jolly has said, is that we are merely providing an opinion to the state government. It's a lost opportunity for the state government to consult with local residents to try and find an acceptable solution that meets the requirements of new residents, as well as trying to build something that fits well into the environment. I support Councillor Crossland. This should be public housing. We shouldn't be creeping into social housing. I hear the residents, not quite as aggressive as Mayor Joel in terms of the 100 stories, but I do support the idea that Yarra is defined by diversity, and diversity means people who can live here who don't necessarily have $2.5 million to buy a property in these areas. So I endorse the motion put to the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Gomez. Would anyone else like to speak in this matter? Deputy Mayor Harrison.
I too would like to acknowledge the work that our officers do on these applications, and it is a crying shame that the state government is unlikely to pay much heed to it, just like the feedback that's been provided by community members who have voiced their concerns about the so-called consultation that's happening. Please, people need to be aware of this, and they need to raise this with, you know, we're in a state election year, we should be talking about this, people need to be aware of it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else like to speak in this matter? Would you like to exercise your right of reply? No? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Crossland Jolly's motion, that is passed unanimously. Because it's a DTB application, I know I've asked you this at the end of every application. Can you just explain to the people here what happens from here on in, please?
Through you, Chair. The Manager of Statutory Planning will now write to Homes Victoria outlining the alternate motion that's been discussed at tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer. Thank you, everybody who's come here for the Rutland Street at Clifton Hill application. We move on to the final application tonight, 6.2, 159-167 Johnson Street and 329 Napier Street and 146-152 Argyle Street, Fitzroy. Believe it or not, that's all one site. It's the, many of you have been there, it's the McCoppins bottle shop, the most expensive bottle shop in the world, but the best, in Fitzroy. We have no registered speakers. So, councillors, are there any questions to officers? Okay, well, I'll very happy to move the officer recommendation. If there's a seconder, I'll speak to it. Councillor Crossland.
I had a series of amendments.
Sorry, stand corrected. Can we get them on the screen, please? Okay, Councillor Crossland, can you not speak to it, but just explain what these amendments R.
Sure thing, thank you. It was to ensure there's a minimum of 1 bicycle parking space provided to each dwelling, making sure that these are at grade so it's easy for people to use. Secure residential on-site bicycle parking, making sure it has access to the ground floor and common hallways, that there be some reconfigurations with the stairwell access points in the garage, which right now are quite challenging, making sure stairwells are unenclosed to common areas, that there be a chamfer on the corner to improve that accessibility around that corner, incorporation of additional greenery and all the necessary components to make sure that keeps running. I think they're the kind of key things that I'll touch on.
Thank you. Would anyone like to second that? Councillor Aston. So just before we go into move the mover and seconder, so you're moving the officer recommendation, which is essentially a refusal. Like if it was up to us, we would refuse with those extra conditions. Okay. So Councillor Crossland, your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. Just in brief, I think that there would be opportunity to increase the number of residential parking and bicycle parking spaces to make sure that we have enough to meet the need should this development go ahead in future. We need to make sure that the parking area can also be easily accessed. There are issues around the stairwells in terms of the car park layout where it is practically impossible to actually access the stairwell, which I think is deeply problematic. There is opportunity for the stairwells to be improved, so should it proceed, people will actually utilise them. And there's also opportunity to increase what would be a chamfered corner to make sure that you've got greater ease of movement at that location. And if it were to proceed, we want to make sure that this is a greener looking building with more vertical greenery and making sure that you've got the irrigation and supportive infrastructure there in place, including the maintenance to make sure it happens. Overall, I appreciate that this is a position of refusal, but if it does proceed, I would like to see better outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aston.
Yep, also recognising that this is a position of refusal, but if it's going to go ahead, for me, the big thing in this is around the vertical greenery. Obviously, Napier Street is quite a green street on its own, but Johnson Street is not, and there's a very large frontage onto Johnson Street with this block. And in terms of helping us with urban heat island effects, adapting to climate change, as well as just with visual pleasantness, it would be great if we can start seeing more well-maintained and irrigated vertical greenery popping up on large-scale buildings.
Anyone else want to speak on this matter? I'll just say something as the ward councillor. I mean, it's 2 stories higher than what's we want on that site. And they're just leveraging off each other, these developers. So I think we've got no choice but to say, no, 11 stories is too high for that site. It'll have the vast majority of locals backing us in on that one. So I'd encourage all the councillors, please, to consider passing this motion. Anyone else want to speak? Would you like to exercise your right of reply? No. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. That is passed unanimously. And we know what happens from here on. We write the letter to the DDP. So at 8:17, I close the meeting. Thank you, everybody.